Можна довго сперечатися, яка система освіти більш ефективна – західна чи східна. Щоб розібратися в цьому питанні, ми запросили наших друзів, партнерів з Сінгапуру і Великобританії. Які переваги освіти в цих країнах? Як оцінюють прогрес учнів? Чи необхідні домашні завдання? Та як необхідно оцінювати прогрес учня?
Well, I think that the sort of thing that Mark has been describing there about the developing the confidence to try lots of things. Students who feel as though they are actually able to make progress, that they can try something new, that they have the confidence to do it, they're not worried about failure, they know that if they try something and it doesn't work first time, that they can give it another go. And I think a lot of the things you've been talking about there, Mark, are encapsulated in the idea that trying different things and developing different skills and gaining that type of confidence serves you well in whatever you're going on to do.
The goal for most students attending secondary school in the UK is to then progress on to university and then ultimately to pursue a career after university. And there's a range of skills you need, I think, to make that transition from secondary education to higher education. And if schools can provide that experience and, as Stewart says, the confidence to make that transition, I think that's an important factor.
Naturally, it's your language, it's either your mother tongue, or in Singapore it's English. Because if you can't have a good command of the language, it will prevent you from learning other subjects. As an example, in Singapore, we only learn science from grades 3. We don't learn science in grades 1 because the child's language ability is low. So for the first 2 years in a Singapore school, in grades 1 and 2, they have between 6 to 8 hours of English just to give their proficiency. The other part would be social emotional learning. We in Singapore, we find the SEL, social emotional learning, an important, crucial part in a child character building on top of confidence.
Well, there's mixed evidence about homework. There is quite a lot of research done into whether homework is effective. And on balance, it seems that there's a great difference between its effectiveness at secondary level and at primary level. But I think that needs to be analysed with some care. Now, it may be that the nature of homework which is generally given to young children isn't terribly helpful. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's homework that's the problem. It might be what they're asked to do. Maybe they need to be allowed to do more developmental things rather than whether it's just simply colouring in or finding something. With secondary school children, there does seem to be significant advantage with them practicing the things that they've learned in school. So I think it's quite a difficult question to answer fully because I think it's quite a detailed question.
We do a lot of projects outside the classrooms in Singapore. So on top of your normal core subjects, outside school hours, the kids have to do coding, STEM, and robotics. So projects is very important. Part of our education reform is this thing called student-centric learning. So the classroom should be very, not say managed or run by the students, but it must be involving the students a lot. The teacher's role, as you would have heard it many times, is a facilitator. So the teacher points out different questions and the students discuss among themselves. So student-centered learning is important. In terms of homework, the Singapore schools, they only have 1 hour of homework in grades 1 and 2. And the 1 hour involves all subjects, so it should not take a lot of time for a student. So homework is controlled in grades 1 and 2. Grades 3 onwards, it's more, but again, it's managing the students' time.
Well, there's a lot of evidence that project work is actually very successful at any age, and that it helps develop some of the skills that we know careers are going to need in the 21st century. Mark and I work together by collaborating on things. So actually helping children learn to collaborate, developing some of those team skills, knowing how to come up with ideas, develop lots of options, and be able to work out which is the most advantageous is the sort of thing you can do in a project. it's not something you can do if you're asked to do questions 1 to 3 of your maths textbook.
Yeah, I think I would add to that. I think in the UK we have seen a shift in our the way that our key examinations are structured, GCSEs and A-levels, away from coursework towards more end of programme sort of testing, a more linear approach. I think the evidence suggests that's hopefully going to raise standards, but I do think it's important to have the coursework alongside the final examinations.
Well, that's an interesting question because we'll both be thinking about that as parents as well as educators.
Shall I start? So I've got 2 children, aged 15 and 13, both in independent schools in the UK. I think there's lots of things we can do. Obviously, be supportive, help them with their homework as and when they need help, encourage them, try and ensure that they recognise that it's important to commit to studying, important to commit to their homework, it's important to take school seriously, but it's also important to have interests outside school and to make sure there's a balance between enjoying themselves and being children as well as studying hard.
And I think as well as helping the children with school, actually parents have an important role in helping schools with children because nobody knows the child better than the parent. And that relationship between the school and the parent is very important in helping the child make the most of their education. So it's a very important 3-way process. So not just for helping children with their schooling, but please help your school to understand your child.
I think in terms of parents, all parents want their students to do well, but that's one aspect of learning. What if your child is not very strong? What if your child is not academically inclined? So the strength of the parent naturally is always moral support, and the parent should also engage themselves in learning what are the latest teaching trends out there. As an example, I shared earlier that we learned the model method, which is a skill of teaching visualization. When I was a child, that technique never existed. So today as a parent, I have to learn the model method so that I can teach my child the skill of visualization. So a parent also needs to learn what are the latest trends, be the moral support, and always be there to be able to guide a child how else they can actually enjoy school.
Well, I think so. Some of those skills that teachers probably should always have had. Energy, passion, desire to inspire children.
Enthusiasm.
Organisation, willing to work hard. It's all of those things.
But I think I would add to that. I think we're seeing in schools now in the UK, the younger teachers, so the next generation of teachers, are more comfortable with technology, and some of the older teachers who've perhaps been teaching 30 plus years and perhaps are towards the end of their careers, less comfortable with technology. So having that ability to adapt to new ways of delivering lessons through the use of technology, I think is also important.
But old guys like me, we're still okay with the technology, Mark.
The teacher needs to be all-rounded. The teacher is no longer just an academic transfer knowledge person. The teacher needs to upgrade themselves always. As I shared earlier, Singapore, we upgrade ourselves 60 hours every year. A teacher upgrades themselves according to the guidelines of the ministry in 2 phases. Phase 1, which is 70%, is professional development. In other words, what do I need to change my teaching styles, my teaching knowledge, my pedagogical knowledge? That's your professional side. Your personal side, the teacher is then given training on how they do classroom management, how do they reach out to different types of learners. In Singapore, our classroom size is between 35 to 45 kids in a classroom. So it's a big class. The teacher needs to be able to manage that class. And I guess constantly upgrading themselves is necessary. Knowing what the latest teaching trends out there is crucially important.
I think there's a lot to be said for recognising a child's attitude to work, because and I think we all know that if we're enthusiastic about what we do, if we feel as though we can tackle difficult problems and work our way through them, then we're pretty confident we probably will in the end. So if a child is developing that intellectual resilience, they know that because something's tough, actually you don't give up, actually you will keep getting better, and they develop different strategies for trying to do that, then that is a real measure of success. And I think that's one of the things that I already admire about Ukrainian Global School, that the ethos here recognizes that you're trying to make sure that children know that they can always be getting better at something, that they feel as though they can get better, they know how to do that. And that's a skill and a way of thinking that if you give children that, then that's going to serve them so well throughout their lives.
I'll just add to that, at Bishopstrow we test our students every week. We actually have Saturday morning testing, and the tests focus on their progress during the previous week in maths and English. But when it comes to reporting their overall progress, we not only report their progress in their academic subjects and with their English language, but we also report how well they're managing to develop as a boarding student, so living in a community, sharing, being part of a team, being part of a community, but also how they're progressing in sports and some of their other activities. And again, the emphasis is on the whole development, not just obviously their academic skills.
And Mark's identifying something else that's really important there. There's lots of evidence that children getting regular, high-quality feedback about what they're doing really helps them to develop. They like to know how well they're doing. They like to know how they're getting on. So doing that frequently and effectively and professionally really is effective. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you.
Earlier I mentioned about student-centric learning. Student-centric is where we try to get the kids more involved. In order for that to happen, the teacher's role, as they say, is a facilitator. An example of facilitation is actually to ask questions. So in a Singapore context, 1 hour of math is 1 hour a day. And the teacher asks lots and lots of questions to the students. As she's asking the questions, she's actually evaluating the conceptual knowledge of the students. So informal assessment, informal question is a crucial element of guiding your lessons, so you know, do I slow down? Do I focus on certain concepts? So we believe in Singapore, informal assessment is a crucial way of starting the lesson.
Дякую нашим експертам за таку змістовну і цікаву відповідь. Якщо у вас залишились питання, завітайте до Ukrainian Global School.